And should drivers aged 75 be made to retake their driving test? 0207 862 2222 is the number. New figures have revealed that the risk of older motorists being killed or seriously injured triples after the age of 75. Now, data from the Department of Transport showed a sharp increase in the rate at which older car drivers were involved in serious accidents compared with middle-aged motorists. Now, deaths involving over 75 significantly outnumber those of even the most inexperienced drivers on the road. So, should drivers aged 75 be made to retake their test? Lowri, I'll start with you on this one.
Because I'm the closest to that
No,
age.
not at all. You could go one
You're
of two
going to have
ways
to
on
pry
this.
my car keys out of my hand. Probably not cold, dead hand, live hand.
Okay.
No, I think we know that 1/5 of all traffic accidents involve young drivers.
Yes.
It's young drivers that are most dangerous on the road. I think absolutely people over the age of 75 should have mandatory sight tests, for example. If you have certain conditions like dementia, obviously that should be notifiable so that you don't drive. But for so many older people, it's their lifeline. It's how they visit family and friends. It's how they get to the doctor. So to take that away from older people, just because somebody said that the moment the clock strikes 12 and you're 75, you're no longer allowed to drive, that's discriminatory in my view.
Well, I mean, and that will be an argument that many at home will state. But I think in the past we have always seen the number of casualties and fatalities in younger drivers be higher than older drivers, but actually now tides are changing, and in total this was last year 122 drivers over the age of 70 were killed in comparison to just 118 drivers under the age of 30. So that is a significant sort of maybe
But we
change.
don't know who caused the accident, do we? They were killed in traffic accidents, but who was the cause of that? Maybe it was younger drivers who were annoyed by the older driver pootling down the road at 40 miles an hour.
And that might be interesting because obviously if you're an older driver and you're in an accident, you might be more vulnerable to injury and fatality. Bobby, what's your thoughts on this?
So why do we take a driving test in the first place? Is to ensure that we've got the right skills and safety ideas to be on the road so that we are not a threat to ourselves and to other people. And this can happen for young people at the age of 17, 18. And yet 6 decades later, we assume that people, their skills haven't atrophied, but also their sort of sense of safety around the world hasn't atrophied. And the reality is, as we get older, from 18, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, there's a decline in our reaction times, a decline in our vision, in our cognitive function. This is a sad reality of being a human. Mm-hmm. And why do we assume that at the age of 60, 70, 75, 80, that we have the same skills as we did when we were 18, 20, 25? So I think having a test ensures that we're capable, safe for ourselves, but also safe for other people on the road as well.
I think it's very dangerous to view human beings as in a kind of steady state of decline. You're great when you're 20, but it's all downhill from there. I think there's a concept of thin slicing. Thin slicing is as you do something more and more, whether that's because you get older, you get better and better at it. So actually there is an argument to say, yes, maybe you do need glasses when you drive, and you didn't need that at 20, but actually your abilities as a driver are better because you've just much more experience.
And also just going back to your argument that we are in decline, isn't that an argument then to just have a driving test every 10 years or every 5 years, just to make sure that your eyesight hasn't gone? Because obviously people need to start wearing glasses at any age.
To be honest, there's almost an argument that you'd say like, age of 20, age of 30, age of 40, every 10 years so often. But the reality is there is still a sharp drop-off in our sort of cognitive skills, our vision, reaction times. Again, a lot of driving accidents happen because people don't react quickly enough. So I think, it's not about being fair, it's about being, in some ways, just towards other drivers as well. Because there's someone on the road, we've all been there, and someone's not reacting quickly enough, that can cause accidents. So I think,
yeah, but isn't it true that older drivers tend to drive slightly slower, and therefore they should be easier to work around rather than somebody that's going, let's say, 80 miles per hour in a 30 zone, which I think we can all paint a picture of the individual we imagine doing that, and they wouldn't be over 75.
But even slowness sometimes, if you're on a motorway at 70, you're driving at 60 or 55, that can also cause issues. So both extremes.
That's called victim blaming. So that's like, oh, the person who then weaves in and out at 95, it's not my fault, it was a 75-year-old doing 60 be on a motorway. I just think this idea that there's a sudden point at which you are no longer capable, by all means, do a sight test. But for the idea that we'd have to do another driving test every 10 years, oh my goodness.
I'm going to go to the calls now because I'd be really interested to find out what your experience is at home are. I don't know if anybody's had an older relative that they think shouldn't really be driving, and I do wonder whether something like this would kind of take that awkward conversation or that debate out of your hands. Terry from Kent, what's your thoughts? Should over 75s have to take their driving test again?
It won't work. The thing is, at the moment, you've got thousands of people waiting to take the test to get a car. So my car broke down last week. It cost me 50 quid to get from where I live to the shops because there's no taxis. Well, that was a taxi. There's no buses. There's no other, and also, how long in front do the pensioner have to apply for a licence? You know, if his licence runs out when he's 75. Does that mean that if he can't get a test before that, he ain't going to never be able to drive again?
Well, presumably they would have to. You're absolutely right. There is already very large waiting lists in terms of being able to take your driving test. So much so that I think the DVLA sent out a message saying, please do not put in to do your driving test unless you're absolutely sure you are going to pass, because people are just so keen. They're taking it 3 or 4 times. So Terry, there's definitely a problem with capacity. That would have to be increased. I don't know, maybe we fast track older drivers who already have their licence to make it a bit quicker, because they're probably, maybe they're more likely
we just
to
allow
pass.
we don't fast track, we poodle it so they can, like, as long as you're about 76, by the time you get there, then you have to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how that would work, but in principle what we're saying is if we are seeing an increase, a sharp increase in fatalities and crashes in the over 75s, I think it actually starts around 66, unfortunately, when I was reading the research into this, but there's a sharp increase after 75. What do we do about that, Terry? How can we mitigate that? We don't want to see, you know, our grandparents dying in that manner.
Well, the thing is, I'm 72, yeah? I've been driving for the last 40 years and I've never had an accident.
Well done, you sound like a man that would definitely pass your test.
Pardon?
You sound like a man that would definitely pass his test then.
Yeah, but I'm 72 now.
So, Terry, I mean, you're a great person to speak to then, because you would be approaching that age. What I would be worried at the age of 37, I forgot my age there, and I've been driving since I was 17, so 20 years, I've probably forgotten a lot of the techniques that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to sort of drive like this. I don't know if I always do. I would be worried that I wouldn't pass the test myself, never mind if I'd been driving for 40 years and not had to take a test.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you learn by experience, don't you? I've been driving, say, the length of time I've been driven over in lorries, vans, minibuses, vans with trailers on the back. I've had experience, so that you keep that experience. You never lose that experience.
Which is great, and that's you as an individual, and you sound like a fabulous driver. There is no criticism of anyone as an individual. We're looking at the stats in general, and there is a steep increase in crashes and fatalities. And with that steep increase, what do we do to mitigate those consequences?
Well, there's nothing really you can do. I've been more worried about the youngsters who've got no experience getting behind a car, and they're the idiots who are going around 70, 80 miles an hour, not after old pensioners.
Although, Terry, for the youngsters, they are, again, forced to pay significant premiums if they're wanting to drive on the roads. And if they get a certain number of points within the first couple of years, they have to either reapply, they lose their licence, so there are measures.
But Terry is right. We're focusing here on the over 75s. But maybe we should actually say that, OK, if you're under the age of 30, perhaps, you have to have one of these black boxes fitted to your car so that it knows if you're driving over the speed limit, and that contacts your insurance company. Maybe we take any radios and stereos. Maybe we say you're not allowed to take passengers in the car, so you don't get, people driving their friends home from nightclubs and things. I mean, if we were going to put those sorts of policies in place, would you be happy then for the policies at the other end of the age spectrum to be put in place?
Well, yeah, there's new ideas about having insurance linked up to a black box on your car. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's optional, but that would be a case of making that compulsory. But it's about the fairness, Terry, I'm hearing from you.
There are two things that one is self-driving cars, of course, so we won't have that issue, because at some point cars will drive themselves.
Do you think the over 75s will be wanting to get into self-driving cars?
But the other is, if you live in any kind of city in the UK at the moment, increasingly you can't drive your car anywhere.
Yeah.
So they're just going to prevent us driving in general.
I mean, there are a lot of blockages in terms of this policy at the moment. One being it's very hard to get a driving test anyway, even if you're just trying to get onto the roads for the first time. Terry, thank you for your call. Veronica from Dorset, what's your thoughts?
Oh, good morning. Good morning, Storm. Sorry, I was miles away then. I think you should take a test once you reach 50.
Okay.
Every 5 years, at least. I gave up driving at the age of 78 2 years ago, not because I wanted to. I'd been driving for 50 years, and I was driving home one day, and I suddenly couldn't feel the pedals. I didn't know whether I was on the clutch, the brake, or what the hell I was on. Fortunately, I was near home. And it turns out, a few months later, I found out I had a disease coming, which I didn't have then, neuropathy or something. It means the nerves in my feet.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's an issue with the nerves in your feet. Yeah. Veronica, I can't even imagine how terrifying that must be. So that's frightened you enough to just hand in your driving licence completely.
If you're a sensible driver, you know when you can't drive.
Which does sound sensible, and I congratulate you on that. Unfortunately, regardless of age, there are a lot of not very sensible drivers out there, and I suppose it's trying to mitigate against the person that would have the same sensationary issue that you had and not do anything about it. Just like, oh, it was just a one-off, it's absolutely fine, and then they find themselves on the motorway having the exact same experience, and everybody is at risk.
Oh, I've seen lots of things on that M6 when I used to go home every year. I even passed a man eating an apple, reading a book, and driving. How many hands has he got?
Well, by the sounds of things, more than two. Or he's very coordinated.
Veronica, when now you're not driving, though, what does that mean you can't do anymore? I mean, there was a reason you were driving. The vision is you've got old people stuck in their homes, unable to see anybody.
Yeah, has it taken away your freedom?
It's taken some of it away, but I have bought myself a mobility scooter.
Oh, okay, so you found a way around it. Veronica, thank you.
I still have my mobility car as my granddaughter, the driver. So she's at hand to take me wherever I want to go, hospital, whatever.
She sounds
so
wonderful.
I'm not completely stuck indoors.
Thank goodness. Veronica, thank you very much for your call. And maybe that's why it was easy for Veronica to hand in her driver's licence, because she has that support network around her. And thank goodness that you do. Steve from Portsmouth, the 75-year-olds retaking their test. Do you think this would be a good idea?
Hi, Storm. Hi, panel. Storm, congratulations on your baby news.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
No, absolutely not. No. I feel that people older, from 70, you've got to have a medical anyway to keep your licence thereafter. But I feel that, every year they should have just a refresher, not a test.
Oh, but Steve, if you are the instructor and you're giving, and every year's quite a lot, that's a lot of paperwork there for a start. So I don't know how much the government would want to get involved in that. But if you're going to give a refresher and you know that individual shouldn't be driving, you can just sense that they haven't quite got the motor skills or the reaction skills that you need to drive, that puts that driving instructor in a very difficult position, does it not?
It does. I mean, I'm a driving instructor, to be honest, and it's cruel to be kind, isn't it? In all honesty, because taking a test. I mean, I teach people of all ages, and I've found that teaching older people, it's your nerves. So they're going to foul through nerves, not because of they can't drive no more.
That's really interesting. You have to take that into consideration. So maybe make it a more relaxed setting. And then if, as you said, you're a driving instructor, if you spot something that you think is a concern, you can report it to the authorities. Maybe that's a workaround, but I take the point, you get a little bit more anxious as you get older. Steve, thank you very much for your call. Joanne from Nottinghamshire, 75-year-olds retaking their test. Is it workable?
I would like to see them retake their test at 70, I think. Even that's probably a little bit old. I'm 58, by the way. But I drive a little sports car, and it's very old because I can't afford a new car. I don't work anymore because I am classed as disabled, but it's a non-visible disability. Now, I do live in the countryside, but the little old people that I see driving around near me, they frighten me to death. They all seem to drive great big Range Rovers, things like that, that I know if they hit my car, I would be squashed completely. And they can barely see over the steering wheel. They seem to be, you know, they're not conscious of what's around them.
Okay.
There's quite a few roundabouts near me, and they don't stop at the roundabouts. They just go straight across. You've really got to have your wits about you to be driving around.
There you are. She's getting a free driving lesson every time she goes out. How fantastic.
How not to drive. And also, I believe when it comes to older cars now, we just call them vintage. It makes it sound much nicer. So you drive a vintage sports car, Joanne. But I absolutely hear your concerns. I think the other concern would be actually just how much admin we can do and how many driving tests we can get through, because there are huge waiting lists at the moment.